So, in medicine, we have to develop with some like they communicate how, and then slowly. Yeah, that's that I
People online want to follow as well.
Yeah, 80.
I don't know if you all have the agenda for this afternoon. There was another talk about shared services on MOOCs by one of the UNED in Spain, of University in Spain. She couldn't come due to family circumstances, so sorry for that. So therefore, we still have 3 presentations. And I have to mention that the presentations before the break were all based on results of the whole project so far. The presentations now after the break are on topics we are still working on. They are now working on a kind of status report on the pedagogical approach of MOOCs, on business models, on how to create an open network, and on what kind of services can be shared between universities. So those are also the 4 topics that are addressed in the second part of the home project. Let me stress again, the home project is not only with 23 partners. We will have a meeting later this year, at the end of November. There is finances for financial compensation for travel and subsistence costs of 10 or 15 experts. So we can have you as an expert present at those meetings. You can collaborate on those topics of your interest. If you're interested, send me an email and I will make you contact with the work package and get you an invitation, etc. So it's not a closed project, it's an open network project. Regarding shared services, there will not be talk about that. What we mean by shared services is that you as an institution or you as a professor outsource some services regarding MOOCs. That can be the support level, the didactical support, it can be the shared platform, it can even be a questionnaire as a pre and post test we are developing with another project called MOOC Knowledge. So there are a lot of services that scale up between institutions and where MOOC is an example of sharing services. So that presentation will not be given. I give now the floor to Fred de Vries, who is a work package leader on the didactical and pedagogical approach on MOOCs. Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah? Okay. My name is Fred de Vries. I'm from the Open University of the Netherlands, and I'm, yes, as Darko said, responsible for work package 3 on didactical and pedagogical approaches in the European MOOCs. I'm going to present you the preliminary results of the work my colleagues Slavi Stoyanov and myself have been done in the last approximately 2 months to get grip of this. Because I don't know what you think when you hear the title, and I thought, oh wow, this is really big. There's so many things flowing around on this topic. So what we decided to do is to choose another approach, not doing desk research, not looking at all the publications which are out there, because we would drown in it and we would get easily the feedback like, you missed a very important publication. So we turned the table and we decided to do a group concept mapping exercise where we start from experts like all of us here on online education, on MOOCs, on business education. So what I will walk you through now is first I'll give a short introduction of the group concept mapping, and then I'll show you our preliminary results, which are to be finalized, and I hope with some help of people who are following this online and of you here in the audience. I'll make it big, yes, 1 second. I'm not familiar with this application. Is it this one? Yeah. Okay. Hello. Okay. First, group concept mapping is a way to a smart way, I would say, to get a common understanding of a group of experts on a particular issue, and it involves a few steps. It's about generating ideas, sorting ideas, rating, and then for us, of course, difficult work to make some sense out of that. It's a software. There is an analysis behind it. Don't ask me too much about the details, but it's called multidimensional scaling in hierarchical cluster analysis. Anyway, it shows what's the group's collective thinking. And what we did in the preparation is state one simple statement, and I'll read it loud to you. Please give us one specific instructional guideline that should be taken into account when designing a MOOC. And then we got, with around, I think, if I remember from my head, more than 50 people we sent this out to, we got 113 ideas. Yeah? And what we've done with these ideas is we went through them all manually and see. Oh, meeting room was full, Darko. It's a big success. I don't know what's happening. Okay, what we've done with these ideas is go through them and, of course, remove the doubles. And there are always some which are, let's say, unfinished raw materials, not understandable, at least for us. So we removed them and we left with 79. So you can imagine with these 113, there were a lot of double ideas. I'll show you some of that later on. In the brainstorming, we got a response from 25 people. You can imagine we sent it out around 60. We got a result of 25. Then we started in the last months sorting the ideas. 18 people started, 11 finished. And then we started rating. 11 started, 10 finished. Rating importance, I mean, and then we started rating the difficult, which objectives are difficult to reach and which are easy to reach. And we got only 10 people. So I have to say, at this moment in time, what I'm going to show you is, statistically not that reliable yet. So we still need some more people to do the sorting and rating, because in terms of the number of ideas, we are fine, but we have to do some more on the sorting and rating, on the rating. Sorting and rating. Okay, if you look at these 79 ideas, then the software creates a map, putting what everyone thinks is related to each other, close to each other. So you see a kind of blur. I don't know whether you can see it in the back, but you see a cloud of ideas, and then you cannot make much sense of that of this moment. What the software helps us to do is to cluster the ideas. It goes first to 16, then it tries 5 clusters, and it's interactively asking whether the combinations make sense. So it's a manual exercise using our knowledge, of course, of what people have been saying. And then we turned out that actually 7 clusters are realistic, these clusters. I forgot to mention that the participants already clustered their own set of ideas, and this is the common understanding of that. Okay, what we've done then is put labels on these clusters. You can imagine that everyone uses different languages, so we again choose the labels which we think are understandable for everyone, and we come up with 7 clustered topics, which goes from organizational issues to assessments to learning networks to what we call hybrid construction and technological affordances, and then last but not least, here on the right, self-directed learning, instructional strategies, and learning design theoretical backgrounds. 1 second. And what you see, obviously, you can see it very clearly that organizational is on its own. But you see that, for example, here's self-directed learning, instructional strategies, and learning design are quite close. So people put these ideas close to each other. Then just to give you a taste of the ideas, because I cannot go through the whole list here, in the section assessment, people find it important that we use peer review, that we include case studies, and that assessments should be assessed themselves for the reliability and the validity. For the organizational issues, people come up with different simple ideas like we need a central contact point for questions. We need to define technical tools students are assumed to be able to use for a specific MOOC. And we need to share materials in an open license like the Creative Commons CC by SA. For the category hybrid construction and technology affordances, people come up with ideas like before you start designing, check the technical possibilities of the platform you're using. Explore the affordances of the emerging technologies. And in the case MOOC needs to be used in the regular curriculum of a university, the design should be flexible enough to actually do that. Instructional strategies are like advices on confronting learners with problems, challenges, real-life problems. Mention explicit support in terms of background information, examples, procedures, and tools. And another thing is not to focus only on personalization, but also on collective intelligence of the learners in a MOOC. Self-directed learning, our colleagues mentioned be clear on whether they are can work individually and take control of their own learning. Whether there is actually literally, I see a typo here, whether each participant is able to do follow his own learning path. On the other side, whether participants can be involved to create artifacts themselves in studying a MOOC. And then we have the theoretical learning background on learning design. It's some people say, actually quite some say, look into the classical online learning and teaching for inspiration for MOOC pedagogies. Someone mentioned using pedagogy, like see learners as self-determined individuals, and people plead for more nuanced approaches in defining MOOCs and look at the micro level of courses. And last but not least, there is learning networks to create a community, of course, amongst learners, to promote social collaboration, and to have MOOCs benefit from the scale through significant interaction between network of peers in a distributed and learning environment. This gives you the highlights of what we found, but of course they are not all that important. So in the rating phase, we ask everyone to rate, and as you may recall from the first slide, we had around 10 people doing that. So we need more people actually rating these 79 statements. And what you find here is that people consider the organizational issues quite important, and what stands out here is also the learning design theoretical background is considered very important, and the learning networks. And at the same time, theoretical learning design in theoretical background is quite difficult to accomplish. So at one side people think it's important, still it's difficult to accomplish. Although the organizational issues are rated as easy to accomplish, and the same goes for the instructional strategies to be implemented. In another way, I'm sure you cannot read that very well. There's another way of saying representing the same information you just saw in this slide, and yeah, it's a different way of presenting. I will leave that for the moment. The last thing I want to mention is that we also ask people's background, whether they consider themselves a front runner, an innovator, or more an adapter of using existing ideas. And there you find that the adapters are focusing on the organizational issues, and the innovators are more keen to create good theoretical learning designs. I will leave it with this. This is work in progress. As this all will be shared with you afterwards, I'd like to invite you to make our results more valid by actually rating these ideas yourself. And Darko will, after the meeting, send out an email to everyone where you're invited to do that. And what we will do, what Slavi and I will do, is based on the results in the coming months, write a report and share it, with, of course, with all of you as a part of this work package. Oh, sorry. You will send it. You'll get it by email. Okay. Okay. That's it for the moment. Any questions now? It's okay. Yeah. Thank you. No questions? Maybe online, sorry, 1 second. No.
So there are other European projects working on the pedagogical approach as well, like institutions are working on it. For example, we have an ECHO project in a workshop tomorrow afternoon. 2 people are already here on the project as well. They have a very dedicated pedagogical identical approach on MOOCs called S-MOOCs, more related to the C MOOC, but then more the seamless social kind of MOOCs that are important, especially aiming also at teachers and training teachers to develop. So there are different pedagogical approaches, and what's the main challenge also to maybe collaborate on that. You can talk about X MOOCs and C MOOCs, but there are many different kinds of things. And to go one level deeper, that can be the 7 main clusters like Fred was indicating. But perhaps we are missing some clusters, we have to be weighted, so we need more response on that.
No, it was obvious that people also mentioned a lot of things which are actually have nothing to do with the instructional design, but more with the organizational aspects.
Yeah.
But still they are important, so it's fine. We will report on that. Yeah.
Like learning analytics, you can say it's only the data. No, it's using learning analytics within your pedagogical approach.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
To what extent the movement reaction to problems that we have in teaching and education, as compared to it being an innovation? If it is to a certain extent, it's a reaction. Have we identified clearly what the problems are we're trying to solve in education?
I don't think so. We have identified the problems exactly. I think it's a reaction. It's a response on the problems. And it's as actually I want to relate to what Mark was saying. I see it as a chance to innovate higher education. But it highlights actually the fact that you need to design a course much more than than you may find in traditional settings. That's why I see this subject on how to design an online MOOC, which pedagogy you use. I see it in the spotlight where before no one was even talking about it. I mean, for many years in open universities we're doing this and no one ever paid attention, and now all of a sudden everyone is talking about it. So I think it's a good sign that this is maturing and that we have the discussion about which pedagogies actually would work online or in a combination.
There is a clear relation between the drivers behind MOOCs. Is it for the social dimension? Is it for inclusion? Is it for continuous professional development or whatever? And the pedagogical approach. well, even there's a relation between business models and the pedagogical approach. Because MOOCs need to be scaled to a massive audience. So also the pedagogical approach needs to be scalable to massive audience. So there is a relation between those two that makes it very hard to make adjustments and analysis. So therefore you need to detail all those issues separately and then try to understand the connection between them. So what we do in the whole project, we first start with the European project, identifying the drivers. So if you look at the survey report, it has also a report on the drivers. And Mark Brown also mentioned the drivers, and he's working on that as well. But that's only one issue. You need to tackle all issues as well. And one issue is the pedagogical approach. How to do that.
Okay. Go to the next speaker then.
Yeah, that's
Hakan.
And the next issue is business models. I have to admit, before this project, I wasn't really dealing with business models a lot. So when I first started work in this one, I said, why I get in this business models part? Because it's really difficult. It's difficult to identify what are the really sustainable business models. And what I saw with our colleagues, that there are a lot of discussion about business models, and everybody has different ideas. First, I would like to state our definition of MOOC, which Darko expressed. It's very important because, especially the last part, it's an offer a full or a complete course experience. This part is very important because what I see in the field that there are a lot of misconceptions about open courseware, open education resources, and MOOCs. MOOCs are processes. All the others are sort of resources, products. So this definition, we strongly believe that covers very well the definition of MOOCs, and you can find it in our strategic report. The second part is what are the value propositions, which is very important for the business models. The research shows us that there are three major value propositions, especially for the institutions. One of them is equal access to education. So through MOOCs, we can access more people and provide more equal opportunity for those who are not able to get. It's also an experimentation. You can try new innovations, new innovative ways of teaching, or you can even try some new technologies, new pedagogies in your MOOCs. And also brand extension. Brand extension is not just for institutions, even for professors who would like to have a name in the field. They try to offer MOOCs, and it works. So a lot of institutions, when you really ask them why they are getting into MOOCs, they usually say that it's just for branding purposes. So these are the value propositions. In terms of revenues, when you look at the implementations and the research, there are 5 major categories. One of them is the tuitions, or the tracks. You follow. For example, in Coursera, you can take a course free, or you can pay a small tuition or fee, so that you can get some extra support. Data mining is another one, which means some of the providers use learner analytics, collect data about the users, and they sell it, or they share it for the research purposes. Advertising is another revenue opportunity. Some of the companies or some of the institutions sponsor some MOOCs, so you can make money. And service selling. When I say service selling, means you can, again, it's like tuition. You can access the course materials, it's free, but if you like to have certificate, or if you like to have some sort of facilitation, if you like to get a evaluation process, you should pay. So it's another way of raising revenues. And the licensing model is another way of sort of earning money. What they do is you can sell your new complete course or a part of it to the special institution, higher education or a corporate, so that they can use internally in their learning processes. So these are the main revenue opportunities for higher education institutions. And there's the other part, the suppliers like Coursera, edX. What they do, how do they make money? Revenue share. Those four, I listed four of them. If you make money through those four ways, you share the revenue with the provider. But the recent figures show that, for example, higher education institutions gets only 15% of the, for example, the money students pay for service selling, and 20% platform gets, and all the others shared as a cost. Licensing model is something a lot of platforms are using. They help professors to create MOOCs, and they offer it free first. And then when they see there's a potential, the platform sells it after, of course, by clearing the copyright issues. They sell it to the other institutions for the internal use. And also another way of making money for the platforms is design and delivery of the cost. Design and delivery cost. I don't know, are you familiar with how much Coursera is asking or edX is asking to offer a course in their platform? Any ideas? Nobody knows anything? Okay. As far as I heard, it starts from $25,000, goes up to $200,000. Those are the sort of the range. So if you want to offer a course in Coursera or edX, minimum you have to pay around like $25,000. Of course, if you want to partner to the project, you have to pay more. So these are the sort of the revenue opportunities for the suppliers. I've been talking about money, and which is something actually everybody or majority of the literature talks when we say business model. But unfortunately, this is not true. This is not a good way of approaching business model. Business models is different than just financial issues. I'll have to use this drawing. I don't know if you can see it. Actually, it's from a presentation EAD2 conference in 2013. It shows how the higher education institutions are sort of unbundling their services, how different parties are supporting or covering the different services once provided only by single institutions. It's important because when you want to talk about business models, you have to think of all those different components. These are just some simple ones. You may add more. In terms of business models, there are a lot of business model approaches or models you can use. From our study, we found this business model canvas as a really interesting one. It's simple to use and has been used in many instances, even for open and distance learning, and also for MOOCs or for OER. In fact, last month, no, in April, at the end of April, I was in Banff, Canada, for an open education consortium conference. There was a workshop about using business model canvas to offer open education resources. But our friend, and actually he is a partner from Israel, Yoram Karman, has a very interesting, simplified business model. He published this actually in an article in Open Learn last year. And he says that in a business model, there are three major components. Customer value proposition, which is what our learners, who are the people will use the system, and what kind of characteristics they have, what kind of needs they feel, and how we meet those needs. That's the first part. And then the second part is infrastructure. What kind of resources and processes we have already, and what are the things we really need. And finally, the finance. Of course, finance is important, but it is actually the last component. But then the problem is which model we use to be able to sort of provide a sustainable initiative, especially a joint initiative. Now I will talk about a little bit joint initiatives, but at the same time in this project we are thinking of, in fact this morning we discussed, we would like to come up a list of guidelines for also institutions. You don't, you can have a business model even for just one course, or an institution, or a joint initiatives like this one, or actually like these. These are just some of them. Or even for countries. Here, I focused only for joint initiatives, especially something like Open Up Ed. But at the same time, during this project lifetime, we will have a guideline. We will have guidelines for institutions too. But we are not thinking of going country level or the course level. So these are. I just want to add. I wanted to add this slide to show some of the major joint MOOCs projects in Europe. ECHO, actually, our friend is here from the ECHO project, and you are in charge of business models, right, in the project. So that's good. We have a lot of companies. Here are our initial ideas about joint projects. First of all, as you see, we try to use our friends Yoram's categorization of the business model. In terms of characteristics and needs of the customers and the ways we meet these needs, we have to do two things. First, we have to look for who are the current learners in MOOCs. Do we have a clear idea? I mean, do you have a clear idea right now? Who are the MOOCers or MOOC participants? One thing, or are they really motivated? I mean, or are there some other drivers or motivational factors that people are coming into MOOCs? Well, anyway, these are just the questions. But the thing is, we are saying that first in this plan for a joint project. First, we have to look for who are the current learners, what kind of characteristics, what kind of needs they have, who are coming, who are competing, who are not competing, and why they are dropping out. But one of the biggest mistakes we are doing in terms of discussing MOOCs, we all say that, oh, the completion rate is too low. Yes, it's low, but what's happening? I mean, or do we have to evaluate this dropout rate with the traditional ways or with the traditional mindset? Or do we need a different mindset to be able to evaluate this high dropout rate? And we also need to know what are the good examples of, what are actually the common characteristics of the best examples of moves. And how we are going to know that which kind of moves are the best ones. What are the best examples? What are the criteria to identify what are those best examples? And then we must have a clear idea who we are targeting. You don't need to target just one group. You may have different groups, but you have to have a clear idea. Who are those people? This is what we say, the first part you have to do. And then, when you are establishing your business model for a sustainable business model, you have to have resources and processes. First, in terms of, you remember that unbundling graphic? We use that graphic to be able to classify what kind of resources and processes we have. So, selection of learners. How do we register those learners? From which sources we will receive learners? How they will come? How we are going to market this, our MOOCs? This is about the learners. And then the content. Who will provide the content? Are we going to use OERs, or do we have some copyright issues about the content? And how we are going to produce the learning materials, especially in a joint initiative. Do we all have to, as a partners in a joint initiative, do we all have to produce the materials, or will someone collaborate, one institution will collaborate with the other institution to produce some materials, and we will use some others to sort of offer those materials? And where will we deliver the instruction? What will be our platform? It will be a shared one, commercial one, or a custom one. Guidance. Who will run the courses? Who will be the instructors? We have to decide. How will we provide the support, which is the most important part when you look at the research done on the current moves. One of the biggest factors affecting the dropout, for example, is this one, support. People say that they don't get enough support, so they drop out. But there are different ways. You have to provide support for the students, for the faculty, for the staff who are, for example, producing the materials, and also for the administrators, the managers of those courses or systems. And then the copyright issue, of course. Who will own the copyright of those materials in these initiatives, joint initiatives? Also assessment. Who will assess the achievement and how? Think about when you have a joint initiative, you have different partners. As one institution, you can do the assessment and all the others. But don't you think it would be better if you share that responsibility with the others, especially in local, in remote areas where you can use that local institutions? So even if you are saying that you want to give certificates, in order to give certificates, one of the important things is how you are going to assess really, how you are, validity and reliability of the assessment is important. And if it's the case, if you really want to be careful about the identity of the learners, you need to have some local help to assess learners. So, but that's a decision. Who's going to do the assessment? Certification is also another part. You, as an institution, single institution. Oops. I think there's no. So, as an institution, individual institution, you can provide the certificate, but at the same time, you can have some other bodies, or even the joint initiative, to provide the certificate. In terms of certificates, who will accept and how we're going to assure that that certificate will be accepted by all the others. And of course, who will provide quality assurance processes? Again, single institution or the initiative itself. Also, in terms of research, especially in terms of evaluating the whole system, all the courses, all the system, who will be doing it and how they will do it. Also, how we are going to improve our joint initiative. Who will do it? What will be the processes to improve our joint initiatives? And lastly, of course, the money. We have to search what are the costs. We have to identify the costs and cost items very carefully. And then the source of finance. How can we find some sources to finance all these initiatives and all the services? And lastly, we have to identify how we are going to keep our joint initiative running. What kind of how will we share our revenues as individual institutions? So these are the basic questions we came up through the analysis of the literature, especially in the field of business management. But we know that there are more. These are the things we did up to now. From now on, we will be discussing the models for the joint initiatives, like Open Up Ed, and then for the institutional levels. And we would like to come up some guidelines for both joint initiatives and for the individual institutions. And if you have ideas, if you have resources, any kind of you would like to share with us, please do. And this is from my side. This is the business model part of our project. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Sure.
Darko mentioned it earlier, he made a comment on it costs a lot to build a book. To what extent, when you're analysing business models for MOOCs, are you basing it on the assumption that it costs a lot of money to build a MOOC? Because there are plenty of us around who believe it doesn't cost a lot of money to build a MOOC. And in that regard, if you look at MOOCs that have cost a lot of money, it's interesting to analyse, did the money go on sophisticated production values or on sophisticated pedagogical approaches? And it's clear from the arguments from the big names that it was on sophisticated production values, because the pedagogical approach is quite simple. Having said that, a simple pedagogical approach done well is quite effective, and people were very happy with those courses. So we can build MOOCs with simple pedagogical approaches, low production values, and they'll be quite effective, and they'll be quite cheap. And that can change your attitude to the business model. Because you can almost build them for your own class of 30 students and open them up to the world.
Well, as Darko mentioned, yes, these issues, business models, pedagogical approach, they are all interrelated and even shared services. You cannot really think of a business model without thinking pedagogical approaches. But there is this thing. I don't know if you are familiar with my university. Anadolu University in Turkey is one of the largest in the world in terms of the student body. We have 1.4 million active students throughout the country, throughout Europe, throughout Asia, blah, blah. Anyway, what we did is we tried to move into MOOCs. And what we wanted to do is we had already some learning methods. We have videos, we have textbooks, audiobooks, all kinds of trial exams, multimedia learning materials, and we want to transfer them into MOOCs rather than just formal courses. And in fact, our formal courses in our programs are very similar to, in terms of pedagogical or instructional strategy. We have like thousands of students, so we use self-study modes basically. So everything is similar to MOOCs. But when 2 years ago we started to use this course materials and the same instructors who produce those materials to be able to transfer all those materials into MOOCs. And our initial plan was like yours, what you said. That will be very easy for us. It took 2 years to transfer only 58 courses. At the beginning, our initial goal was to launch 100 one. But it was so difficult to transfer those ready-to-use, almost the same approach, materials into MOOCs. Because we spend a lot of time for designing those processes. Again, MOOCs are processes, not products. You may have the products, but bringing them into MOOCs, you need to define really learning paths, which will be an alternative learning paths, so that many people will be able to benefit from it. And you have to put a lot of efforts and time and money to be able to design those. So
I don't know if I agree with you.
I know the possible, but this is what I'm an instructional designer. I've worked in that project as instructional designer. I've been designing courses for years. And it took really a lot of time and effort. And there are, of course, a lot of copyright issues, there are a lot of other issues, organizational issues you have to deal with. Even in some cases, you have to adjust some of the legal legislations in order to just open up what you have.
But that could be dependent solely on the institutional design and institutional constraints. Policies, but also if you're reusing existing material or starting from scratch. And I think that locomotion, that you're referring to the project locomotion you started, is very well added value to see, can it be done for less money, more effective, is perhaps not a complete studio or editing of video with just cameras on your iPhone or something like that. So the quality issues is not about quality of video, perhaps, but the quality of the instruction, the design for the massive audience. So I don't think we have the answer yet for MOOCs, and I think that what Hakan is saying, if you are already in distance education of an open university, with a lot of material, it's about clearance, copyrights, it's about making good production of video, having a good design,
having facilitators.
But there are alternatives, and a lot of people have said that it's often when you're using somebody else's material, which is an objective of OER, it's often easier just to recreate it yourself because the rapid development tools that we have available to us now, and you would actually build it quicker than you would source it. Then you have to clear IP. So there's lots of tricks available to us now to develop low-cost MOOCs, and this sidesteps a lot of the challenges people are there.
Production cost is just a small part, maybe. It depends, of course, to your model. But there are some other costs. So what we are saying in our systems, you have to identify those cost items very carefully. There are some stuff you never thought of. Suddenly it came out. Even, for example, let's say that you have this book, for example. That problem we have. We have this book. We already paid we cleared the copyright issues, but there was this one picture in that book. We bought it. We paid for the copyright. We use it in our book, but it was bought just for that book, not for the opening up to everybody. So we had a legal issue in that small picture. So and then you have to have facilitators.
Yeah, get another picture.
I'll draw my own picture.
And another one. Yes.
So just changing the discussion a little bit. In one slide you had as revenue opportunities, advertising and data mining. So how do you reconcile that? I don't know if you're private or public institution. How do you reconcile that with publicly funded institutions?
We are a public funded, yeah. But actually, we make a lot of money through distance education. We have a lot of students. So, I mean, from our case, in our case, we are not really aiming making money for our MOOCs. It's like more brand extension for us. And our motto, my university motto, is providing learning opportunity to everybody. So that's our goal. So we don't have any this kind of money revenue share goals. But all the others, doesn't matter public or private, not all, but many tries to raise some revenue.
I'm just interested just to listen about times where I'm affecting to their overall approach. Infrastructure cannot scale up to that level. So I'm just interested in understanding what sort of things would you trade off? What would you give up? Would you do about the effective without feedback? The issue of moves lies in the shares and how do you feedback to people that are sort of there for 100,000 students, that kind of thing?
Could you repeat the question, Ryan, for answering? It was not.
I think you seem to be saying that there's some pedagogical necessity in teaching that don't scale up well. Well, I would argue that existing MOOCs, some of them very highly regarded, have not scaled up. And they've not claimed to scale up. They said, this is what you're getting, we're not giving you this. I mean, I've done the Edinburgh Introduction to Philosophy, which I found was excellent. But it really was just telling me really interesting things, and very coherently telling me them. And then I entered into a little bit of discussion with my fellow classmates. But other than that, it wasn't sophisticated. But it was quite effective.
Just for that, how do you say that?
Well, there's no problem scaling. But I was looking for that move. I got it, despite the fact that it wasn't scaling.
Just want to check this.
It wasn't a problem with scaling. I wasn't looking for feedback from my students. Now, and this is a thing about MOOCs, as far as education is concerned, only go to certain distances. The other thing that I think we need to be done, probably cannot be done. Public I don't believe they have to spend Excuse me. I've seen great teaching. The Khan Academy is probably the best example of a sort of a low production value approach to teaching that has been hugely effective. I have a doctor in first year engineering who uses Khan Academy videos because they're better than her lecture. She gets no feedback from Salman Khan, and he didn't spend a lot of money producing those videos.
sorry, your voice is not very well today. She was referring to from the University of London. It's one of the oldest universities in distance education already, correspondence distance education. She's saying for good completion rate and success rate, you need feedback and interaction, etc. Yeah, so this is what also the pedagogical approach is interacting with the business model. If you have the feedback, and so the pedagogical approach that you feel important, it has to scale. How do you scale feedback? Then you go to C moves or social moves. Or there's another way, how it's more instructional part, the broadcasting part, videos and broadcasting scale up very well. But then it's about what's the course, what's knowledge, what's transaction. So it's a very dynamic issue. Like you want to raise a question, I want to manage time, and you want all to go to the opening ceremony. So there's one presentation. Sorry for that. And I think it's a nice presentation as well. What's illustrated in this one is that the book is very dynamic, it's very innovative. There's no one solution yet, and I think that's the proof for the locomotion project. Therefore, it's an innovative project to demonstrate that it can be done. And there are other issues to be solved. So let's work together and give each other the opportunity to invest and investigate. Now talk to Ian. He is talking about building on bridges on over knowledge in Europe. Yep. And with some example in there.
Thanks, Darko. So I might hi to everybody online and hi to everybody here. I'm Eamon Costello. I'm from Dublin City University, National Institute of Digital Learning there. And I don't use Macs regularly, so yeah. Okay, yeah. No?
One next picture. Let's go.
I was going to toggle between the two and see could I pick up comments online, but I don't think I'll chance it. It's getting a bit late in the day. So in the project, we have a final work package, which was a gather-all to build an open knowledge network of joint offerings on MOOCs. And the way this was designed was with an emergent philosophy of the other topics that weren't covered by the other expert groups in the project that emerged during the project, because it's such a fluid area and there's topics and things coming up all the time, we would encapsulate under this work package. And there's two expert groups topics we have identified. And one of these came up fairly quickly, which was MOOC readiness. This is just an advanced organizer of the two topics that I'll be speaking about, and I'm conscious that my colleague Mark has touched on some of this already. So you never let anybody go before you because they steal all the material. So MOOC readiness, drivers, and platform selection checklist. And the second one is what I'm calling here European MOOC discourses. And that's the media analysis for people that weren't here earlier that we talked a bit about. But I'll talk about that from a different angle, because what we'd really like to do is to get you involved in it if you're interested, and to show you how you can do that and extend a formal invite to you at this time to do so, and what plans we have to facilitate that. So MOOC readiness is about platform selection. And just with a background of the community activities as one of the deliverables of this project, and how this thinking has evolved, and this has emerged as a topic that is considered important to the group. And I put in migration here under platform selection as well, because it's quite interesting to note a lot of people now, they've adopted a MOOC platform and they may migrate to another platform, which is an important consideration. Or a lot of bigger institutions are employing sophisticated MOOC strategies where they're in more than one platform, or at least MOOC community. So a couple of the activities community activities around this were the Porto conference, in which we presented a paper on our institutional drivers in DCU and what we as a case study of what we had identified and how we use that in our MOOC strategy and mapping our drivers to our strategy. And then we also had a paper there from 2 experts from the Moodle community, from Moodle HQ, and they talked about how they use Moodle as a case study to teach online. And we identified a lot of institutions in Europe that were using Moodle. And then we had a National MOOC Symposium recently in Dublin, and we had a lot of case studies, and Brian and colleagues are here from places in Ireland that are delivering MOOCs and researching MOOCs and sharing our experiences on that. So, some related work in this area as well is ECHO project. So there's a good MOOC platform checklist there on the ECHO project. That was one of their outputs, and it's very good. And a bit that distinguishes the work we're doing from the ECHO project is one of the ECHO project's focus is it's quite strong on the pedagogical aspect, which is very important, but there's other angles that are important to consider as well, which I'll come to. That second one there that's a really interesting paper as well, and they have a checklist where they look at different MOOC platforms according to criteria, again with somewhat of a pedagogical focus, but taking all sorts of things into consideration. And then there's these guys here, the Cooperative for Educational Technology, Simple Guide to Navigating the MOOC Model, a really nice title at that one. And that's a really nice checklist that's worth looking at. And they do talk a lot about institutional strategies and so on. So defining drivers and mapping them to options. So you have options for what you do with your MOOC strategy, but the really important bit is to define your drivers. So one of the things we're doing is we have a paper on this tomorrow at the Eden Conference where we'll go into this in more detail. We have an article coming out this year in a journal as well, in the Aurora Journal, on this, that goes into this in more detail. But a key idea coming out of this research is you're mapping your institutional strategy onto your MOOC strategy, because there's no point, a lot of people take this from a pedagogical perspective, but we are all, and that's vital, but we're all also part of big institutions, and those institutions have identities. And the key idea for me is, what is your institutional identity? Where do you fit? What community you're part of? What do you think you are? What does your university, your institute of technology, or college, who does it think it is? And what role does it have in the world? And what has it said in its strategy that its role is going to be? And this lady here, I did my doctoral research on a theme related to this a while back, and this lady here wrote an interesting article. As she did a study of higher education subcultures, open source adoption. As she looked at how institutions in America adopted their virtual learning environments or learner management systems. And she found that the research-intensive universities were adopting Sakai, and other universities were adopting other ones. And you can see this has happened in the UK as well. So I looked at this in the UK, and colleges of further education, for anyone who's familiar with the UK system, were heavily adopting Moodle. So this goes back to something that Mark touched on earlier about the work that your colleague in New Zealand, whose name escapes me at the moment, about institutions using this to perpetuate their sense of identity and the power that they have and what their place in the world. But it's important to consider what your institutional identity is, who you are, and what you, because that will affect your MOOC strategy. And I don't know if anybody knows this one of the definition of a university. It's an old one at stage, but you may not have heard it. It's a set of warring departmental fiefdoms held together by a common concern about parking. So I don't know who said that, but it's a bit of a classic quote in terms of the literature on institutional identity. And I should really have a Game of Thrones picture up here for this. So one of the things that we did and again, we're going to present a paper on this theme tomorrow, but we would like to, just as an expression of interest as well, and Darko has mentioned that we're going to have a meeting or a conference type event in November, December, and we'll be looking for experts to come along to that be funded to contribute to that. And on this work package, on the first expert topic is what are your institutional drivers? And case studies are lacking in this area of the literature. So Antonio gave a great talk on a lot of the surveys of what people are expressing as their institutional priorities and how these on a survey level. But there isn't a lot on the case study level about how institutions are grappling with these topics. And particularly its platform-specific implementations also. So the second part of this, clear that off. Just going to rub that out. Just trying to rub out that thing that came up there.
Oh, that's that pink.
But, yeah, I don't know what that is. So, yeah, no. That one?
No, the next one.
This one? Okay, bingo. So we talked a little bit earlier about the European MOOC discourses, and we talked about MOOC's portrayal in the popular media. So what I'd like to do for the next couple of slides is talk a little bit about how you could get involved in that and to elaborate a bit more on what Mark has said about how we did that work specifically. And why is it important? It's important because it's influencing policymakers, it's influencing people at high levels in institutions. They're informing their decision making based on what they read in the media. So to that end, and as part of this project, in terms of sharing and building a knowledge network of community of research in this area, we've developed this protocol, and we were informed by the studies that have been done by Selwyn and others in this area, and we developed a protocol, and that could enable us to do a cross-country comparison, which I'll show you in a minute. But I'm a student of history in a former life, so I was looking up a bit, was reading up what Audrey Waters, delighted to have her here at the conference this week, but we can't move forward until we reconcile where we've been before. And there's a great quote from the Washington Post in '99, Blackboard chalks up a breakthrough. Its educational software lets colleges put classrooms on the internet. And that was before MIT OpenCourseWare had come out. So these headlines really take up a lot of space, and they can really dominate. And we need to be really looking at the headlines that are out now, because they're going to be very influential. So I'll talk a little bit about the methodology, the media sources, and the protocol. So we have 20 items in the protocol in our tool that we used, and each of those items has a defined scale. And we have these in a Google form. So you go onto a form, and you just click the form, and you rate each of the articles. And the articles generally in the newspaper are between like 50 and 150 words, so they're quite short. So, and we found only 77 articles in the Irish media, which is, Ireland is a relatively small country, 4 million people, so your mileage may vary. And this certainly isn't the largest of these studies. There's some studies that are whole doctoral theses with the level of them, but this is quite a contained form of study. There's no ethical implications to doing this study, for instance. It's descriptive, and it comes from an interpretive perspective. So here's the first half of those. So we have the year, the publications. I'm sorry, this is probably quite small, the text on this for people at the back. The type of the article, whether it's descriptive or investigative. The content of the story, whether it's local, international, US, UK, European. The average word length. The stance adopted, whether it's negative, neutral, or positive. The likely disruption, is it revolution, evolution, minimal, skeptical, none, not stated. The major focus, whether it's platform, pedagogy, both or other, and surprisingly pedagogy we almost couldn't find at all. Whether there's evidence for assumptions made, the platforms that are mentioned, the frequency of the platform that's been mentioned, and the major drivers. So that's obviously links to the other research stream in this work package. Fear of missing out, institutional branding, increasing student recruitment, extend access, reduce costs, generate revenue, unbundling of services, innovation, curriculum renewal, supporting student readiness, promote research on new models of teaching and learning, or none. The problem of completion rates, is that being addressed in the media? Reference to learning analytics, we didn't find much about learning analytics at all in the media in our analysis. Explicit implications for policymakers, change perspective, discourse, is it reproduction, reschooling, deschooling, deconception? And there was some interesting work in a researcher in Ireland did a media analysis on the phrase knowledge economy, and he found that the popular press, the tabloids, if you like, if that word makes sense to people in your country, the tabloids are actually more resistive to official government policy and policy speak than the more serious, formal, institutional newspapers with the more gravitas were. And they generally tended to just reproduce what they heard in a press release, and they use the language of government, whereas often the more popular press, as the scale goes down, they used more derisive and dismissive language, or they at least didn't accept necessarily all of the things that are being pumped out by the PR departments, type of MOOC, the name of institution as well, and the institutional ranking, whether it's elite, non-elite, etc. And that's quite a big one. Education level and so on. And we use the LexisNexis database for this, which I presume you have access to your institutional libraries, or it's the one we used. It covers the Ireland and UK papers very well, certainly very good coverage. So that's what we've completed, our initial analysis of those. What we'd like to do is do some cross-country comparisons. And we thought about taking a load of countries, but then that's not going to work. I can't speak any languages apart from English and Irish. So, and people need the expertise and to contextualize this in their own countries. But it would be really nice to have a couple of other European countries as case studies. And as I say, we have quite a good structure on this, and that's not to say you can't adapt or use that in any way yourself, but we do have some basis of cross-comparison of findings with this as well. So that's how it's facilitated using these tools and protocols. And you can contact us. There's our email addresses for any further information, or indeed Darko as well as the project leader. And Gur Mahagwiv, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
So, in this work package, you decided to address two topics: platforms of action and the media coverage. And you're working on those topics the next year, and that counts also for shared services, business models, and pedagogical approach. Project runs for another year. We have a meeting in the end of November, the first day of December, I think. We have to finalize it very soon. You are invited to contribute to the aspects of the whole project in these topics. Again, for example, in media coverage, you can do the same kind of research in your own country and using the tools and assessment and etc. for the review of your own media and make a kind of report of that. And also the survey we did last year, without producing country reports, you can produce your own country report if there is enough institutions completing the survey, and then you can benchmark your country and your kind of institutions to what's happening in Europe. So there is room for collaboration on those topics addressed this afternoon. I hope you had a fine afternoon. There's a lot of talks, a lot of discussion going on MOOCs. It's still dynamic. And I think that the next few days in the conference we will have much more talk about MOOCs as well. There's still room for discussion. It's about 45 minutes walk to the reception area, so 45 minutes, 1 hour walk.
You walk.
Walking, or taking a taxi, you can take a taxi. So, see you.
No, the website.
Maybe mention because I thought it's going to be.
No,